Okay, I'll go ahead and call the meeting to order. This is the City of San Diego Commission on Police Practices Ad Hoc Transition Planning Committee. And I will call the roll from our participants list here on Zoom. I'm Doug Case. I am the chair of the committee. We have Patrick Anderson, who is a member of the committee and also our chair of community outreach. We have joining us right now, Brandon Hilpert, who is the commission chair. We have Commissioner Diana Dent on the committee. We have Katie Avendetti from Women Occupy, who looks like she stepped away. And there she is, okay. Who is our liaison with San Diegans for Justice. Staff, we have Charmaine Mosley, our interim executive director, Robinson Resendez, our complaints coordinator, and Alina Conde, our executive assistant. And I will allow Liz and David to introduce themselves if you would. So, Liz.
Yeah, good morning. I'm Liz Barrett from City of San Diego Human Resources Department. I'm a program manager.
Okay.
Good morning. My name is David Niemeyer. I'm with CPSHR and working with the group on the Deputy Executive Director recruitment process.
Okay, and that'll be our primary topic of discussion today, but we do have a couple of small business items. So why don't we show the agenda if we could, Alina or whoever has it. Okay. And is there any public comment, Charmaine?
No public comment received.
Okay, nothing really new, well, not too much new since last week, and nothing new on the budget. The staffing we're talking about today. Nothing new on the implementation ordinance. And I have not heard anything regarding the amendment to the interim standard operating procedures. Have you, Charmaine?
I have to start the routing process.
Okay. Office space. So we did meet with Karen. What's her last name, Charmaine? Is it Johnson?
Johnson. Mm-hmm.
With a DREAM, which stands for Department of Real Estate and Airport Authority. And we're talking about the contract for the renovation of the space on the 9th floor of the Civic Plaza. The cost of renovation was a little bit more than what she was expecting, and so she's also looking at some additional buildings that the city has leases in the downtown area, and see whether or not that might be a better option for us financially. And so she'll be getting back to us on that. I don't think we have anything new with terms of standing rules or community outreach. The legal counsel contract is on the city council docket for approval of April the 5th, and it will be on consent. Although we probably should have somebody attend just to make sure in case anybody decides to pull off of consent.
I will be attending that meeting.
Okay. And do you think I need to Charmaine, or do you think that?
No, I don't think you need to, but if you want to, that's fine as well.
How about if you attend, and if for some reason it gets pulled off of consent, you can text me and then I can pop on.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, and we can scroll down. Actually, the items of unfinished business we're keeping on the agenda. We need to begin working on our operating procedures for investigations. But we wanted to, we put together our outline, but we're waiting until we get our outside counsel on board so that we can begin working with him on that. And we've invited him to the meeting after the contract is approved, which would be on April the 8th, I believe. And then another project they're working on is the requirement for the commission to review and evaluate the police department's compliance with federal, state, and local reporting requirements. And so with that, we'll get to our main item of business, which is the executive recruitment for the executive search process for our deputy executive director, and we are able to utilize the consulting firm that the city has contracted with, which is CPS HR Consultants out of, I know you're in Michigan, I think, I forget where in Michigan, but I will let David talk a little bit about his firm and about the process, and he has some questions for us, and we can, he also sent out, well, he sent to us and Charmaine sent it out, the timeline for the search, and so we can go over that, and we can also work on selecting a date for the community stakeholder panel. So with that, I'll turn it over to David to lead the discussion. And you're on mute, David.
Looks like everybody has a copy of the proposed timetable.
Yes.
And so why don't I just kind of go through that first and see if there's any questions, thoughts, or concerns with that. So
I mean, before we do that, can you give us a little bit of introduction about your firm?
Sure. CPS HR is a joint powers agency, headquarters in Sacramento. We do recruitments nationwide, though a lot of our business is in California. They also do personnel testing, other human resources functions. And so we've done a lot of work for San Diego, and but we really have done work throughout the United States, working on projects like this, working on city manager recruitments, police chief, public works, and the like. So I joined CPS HR about 6 months ago. I'm a city manager, retired city manager from the Chicago area. And so I'm working on several recruitments, most of them in California right now. And so I will be the project lead for this project. And so, as I understand it, I know there's a desire to get a lot of stakeholder feedback in here, and that's probably where I think as we go through this schedule, we can talk and certainly get your feedback. So today is obviously the kickoff meeting.
Before you start, maybe Elena can put the timeline on the share the timeline on the screen. If not, I have it up. I can do it if you don't have it handy.
All right, I couldn't unmute myself. I believe I have, let me see. Yeah, I have it. Let me just share it 1 second. Oops, 1 second. Can you see it?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, now it's too small, but we can see it. Okay, there we go. Okay, sorry to interrupt, David. Go ahead.
No, that's okay. I want to. It's easier if everybody sees it, so I don't have to then repeat word for word. But so today is obviously the kickoff meeting with the commission going through the timeline. Like to have a discussion, depending on how much time you have, about ideal candidate attributes and the recruitment process, stakeholder involvement, and then how often the commission wants feedback in terms of the recruitment schedule. So we've got scheduled over the next 2 weeks to do a number of stakeholder interviews, including the members of this committee, as well as the interim executive director and then community leaders. And so the purpose of this is that we want to make sure we're getting the qualities for the ideal candidate that you want. And that's going to really inform us in terms of how we market this, who we market to, and when we're talking to potential candidates, you know, what strengths and weaknesses we'll be looking for. So in a couple weeks, as we're getting near the end of the stakeholder feedback, we'll basically summarize that, submit it to the commission. We'll begin to work on a draft brochure, which you'll have the opportunity to review. The week after that is when we look to get the final brochure out. We do this in what's called kind of a flip book process, where it's very easy to kind of read, and we get a lot of good feedback on that. We'll also prepare the publications, the recruitment and advertising sources that we're advertising in, and as well as our outreach strategy, and receive your feedback on that. So all that is scheduled to take place over the next 3 weeks. The active recruitment is scheduled to start the week of April 18th. And so we typically give about 30 days for a full recruitment. And that's because we want to, and that's not just time to put advertising and publications, but we do a lot of personal outreach where we'll talk to candidates that we're familiar with. Some of this we'll do through email. We have a very large database of for projects that we've done like this before, tens of thousands of candidates. We also use LinkedIn Recruiter, which is a way of really kind of narrowing the focus of the types of candidate that you want. We'll use that, but for our top candidates, one that we really identify as someone we think are being interested, we'll make personal phone calls to them. And so that process, reaching out to people, giving them time, obviously, to prepare the materials, takes about a month. And so as you see, the final filing date scheduled for May 20th. After that, we'll screen. So any candidate that meets the minimum qualifications, as described in the announcement, we'll do a screening interview. And these screening interviews are more just the purpose of to make sure the interest is legitimate, to find out some basic information about them, find out the type of person they are, and that will help us kind of determine kind of our top tier candidates. So we are going to then provide to the commission approximately 5 to 7 candidates for the commission to be invited for interviews. We'll give you a packet that'll have all the information about the candidates. And in June, mid-June, we'll begin to schedule the interviews. And again, depending on your timing, we've got semi-finalist interviews scheduled for the week of June 20th and 27th. What we have in our schedule is actually kind of 2 sets of semi-final interviews. One is with a group of 7 to 10 community leaders, and the other is with the selection committee, which is comprised of the commission chair, the first vice chair, the community outreach chair, and a community representative. So that is scheduled to take place the week of June 20th and June 27th. And then around the holiday, the 4th of July holiday, we would schedule the final interviews, and background checks would be done over that. And I'm sorry, and then the interim executive director would interview the final candidates, and there would be a conditional offer that would be based on a successful background check that we would do over the middle of July. And again, with the goal, depending on the candidate's ability to move to this position, onboarding sometime in late July through mid-August. So that's the schedule. Is there any questions about that at this point? Okay.
Doug just sent a text. He had to reconnect, so he's not yet in, but I guess I'll take over. I see Patrick has his hands up. Go ahead.
Okay.
Yeah, this is a question for, I think, Brandon, it's a question for you and me and Charmaine. But the ultimate decision maker for this is the full commission, right? Or is like who's the final vote on this position?
I mean, I'll let Charmaine chime in as well, but I mean, I think hiring by committee is usually never a good sign, or not a good sign, but it makes it harder to find candidates if you have to have, everything go to a full vote of the full commission. So I I don't know, my thought is you'd probably have, the community panel provide their feedback. And then I think it would be, as you pointed out, it'd be Charmaine, the executive director, me currently as chair, Doug as first vice chair, and you as outreach. I would think that we would make that recommendation. And then I'm envisioning that would probably be it. And then we would consult with the commission, but I don't think the commission would necessarily vote on specific candidates. It's kind of my thought.
So it's that committee that makes the decision.
Well, technically, according to the bylaws and the implementation ordinance, the executive director is the person who does all hiring except for the executive director. And so the final decision actually would be up to the executive director. So the committee would give her guidance, but the decision would be up to the executive director.
Okay, that was my question. Thanks.
My internet is not stable, so I may get kicked off again. We'll see what happens.
Okay.
So
All right.
Dave, while you're reconnecting, we just went to questions and the first one was from Patrick. So I don't know if you want to pick it up from there.
Okay. I'm not sure how far along you got. Did you get through the entire timeline?
I did.
Okay, and on the copy that was sent to us, there was a couple of questions, and I'm not sure whether you asked those or not, or comments that were made. I'm not sure who BL1 is or BL is.
It was me.
Okay, so the one of the comments was under the screening. It says.
Maybe can you share your screen? Oh, perfect. Thanks.
Okay, then yeah, so you can see the comments there. So I guess the question is, at what point in time is the oops, hold on a second. If you can scroll back up, go back up to the first question. Let's go down. There you go. So the first question was that the reference checks should occur after the interviews. And then the next question was, can the commission discuss who will be on the initial interview panels, the semi-finalist panels, and final interviews? Well, I'm not sure what the semi-finalist panels are, because basically we have two feedback panels. One of them is a community feedback panel, and one of them will be a commission feedback panel. And for the community feedback panel, we will be selecting the organizations. And then the organizations will be selecting their representative, and all commissioners will be invited to the one for the commissioners. And then for the final interviews, I think we have it listed there, but I think it was going to be go back. Oh, just scroll back down a little bit. Right there, it says the selection committee would be the commission chair, first vice chair, community outreach chair, and then a designated community representative. As well, the commission wish to have these presentations in person. That's a good question. We should discuss that. And at first I see Kate has her hand up, so Kate.
Oh, I'm sorry. Doug, I had, I don't mean to interrupt, I just had a question, so I'm clear. Is it, there will be two panels, basically? The community panel and then the commission panel?
Right.
Okay, that's what I thought. Sometimes there's a community panel, a commission panel, and then one more like internal or external, like a leadership panel. So that's why that was where my question had been, but it sounds like there's just those two. So I think I'm clear now.
Okay, and then Kate.
Yeah, I just had a couple questions. I didn't know, once we went through the timeline, if we were going to pick particular topics, but So I just had two things that we've already talked about previously, and one is as part of the advertising or recruitment section, we wanted to make sure that it would go out to NACOL and to I think Brandon is involved in at meetings of other commissions and oversight committees and that whole group. I mean, that would be, those would be important people or important places to get it out to. So just wanted to make sure that that was part of the recruitment. And I did want to raise the question about how the community organizations are going to be picked. Is that something that the transition committee is going to do, or and then we would pick the organization and the organization would pick their representative, I assume?
That would be my assumption. I'll let Brandon chime in, but I think it's within the scope of this committee to make that decision without having to get a vote to the board.
Doug, when you said Brandon, did you mean me again?
Actually, I meant Brandon to see whether or not he agreed we don't have to go to the full board to get the community groups approved.
Yeah, I mean, I would agree. I think the transition committee is the proper place for that.
Okay. And then Patrick, did you have some ideas of how we would select the groups?
Well, I think, can we scroll back up to where exactly that is? There it is. Okay, so we're talking about having that group assembled no later than June, I want to say 13th, so that the list of who's on that interview panel can be shared with the candidates. So if we're aiming for a 6/13 deadline for finalizing it, that gives us a fair amount of time to actually ask the community, to get some community input on this. So Kate, one of the things I can do is, but Kate, I want to ask you about this. One of the things I can do is, when I announce to that big email list that I have that this is happening, I can say that there will be I can sort of explain that there's a panel that has room for 7 to 10 representatives from different community groups and ask for feedback on that. I'm a little hesitant to just pick 7 to 10 groups and ask them to appoint somebody. I
like the idea of giving groups the opportunity to volunteer, apply, and probably need to make it clear what the expectation is, so that the expectation will be they have a representative who will be available to participate in the panels and provide feedback. And if we get a large number, then as a committee we can narrow that down. But
yeah,
I agree the best approach is to make it well known that this is going to be happening and encourage groups to apply to participate.
Kate, do you agree with that?
Yeah, that's kind of what I was thinking, actually, because I mean, obviously we could sit and think of groups, but I think it's a good idea to open it up. You have a substantial list and basically have groups and people self-nominate.
Great.
And I don't think we're necessarily wed to the 7 to 10. So if we end up with 12, 12 were interested, all they are basically is a feedback panel, people who will be hearing a presentation and providing feedback. And so
Liz, were you about to chime in on this? Is there a city rule we need to be aware of in this part of the discussion?
No, I just had a general idea, just to suggest. I didn't have a rule necessarily, but I was gonna offer that maybe when you're reaching out to do the stakeholder interviews, or seeing who would like to participate, and then you could also say, in addition to stakeholder interviews, we're looking for a panel member. Maybe you could put it all in one, was just an idea. And then the other idea is, maybe you could do it as a survey, where anyone who wants to could provide input into the qualities of a ideal candidate. And that way it's easier to be more inclusive. So even if a community group can't attend but wants to, they can still use that survey to submit their responses to you.
So
Just an idea.
Are you talking about the part of this process that's further up this page? You're talking about the interviews with stakeholders? Keep scrolling up, please. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
More and more. Yeah. Sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah, that was the spot. So maybe because probably your stakeholders are going to be some of the same people who might want to be part of the interview and selection process. So you could broadly share and it could be open to anyone in the community. It could be posted like a quick survey link. Like please share if you can't attend the meeting. Here's a survey where you can submit the ideal qualities of the qualities of an ideal candidate. Maybe they don't have time to meet with you before the deadline. Just an easy way to have a catch-all option so anyone can submit input if they wish. And then maybe there could be a like follow-up, like check here if you wish to be part of, considered as part of the interview panel, and then you could follow up with email.
So David, do you have a survey that you use for that purpose? And if so,
Yes.
then we can adapt it slightly, and then I can just send that link to the big email list.
Yeah, we do have a survey. The survey is really going to be similar to the questions I'm going to be verbally asking people. It's about the attributes and things like that. We can put out a survey. It'll be tallied in SurveyMonkey. You know, my question actually up front was going to, because this is kind of in front of us right now, the community leaders, stakeholders, how are we going to determine who is going to be interviewed as a stakeholder? So that's probably a question I need some feedback on probably today, because I want to get the stakeholder interviews start to set up next week.
Yeah, so one of the things that Kate and I can do is from the community perspective, Kate, I'm volunteering you, but I'm assuming that's okay. We can basically put together a list of folks in the community who've been most active throughout this entire process.
Fantastic.
How many, I mean, when you say stakeholder interviews, I've got a list of about, between 800 and 1,000 people who have stakes, declared stakes, but I'm assuming you would like that winnowed down at least a little. Should we say 450, 220? What do you think?
Well, so if we're talking about,
I'm being facetious, by the way.
No, I know
I'm
you
assuming,
are. I know you are. Yes, yeah. No, just to give you a perspective, I went through this in a previous recruitment. We had, I had 50 stakeholder interviews. That would be challenging to do in 2 weeks. That's the only thing I'm concerned about. It's not that we don't mind doing them. It's just realistically, because the stakeholder interviews are 35, 40, minutes. I could 15 to 20, I think would be, if we're going to stick to this 2 weeks, I think would be reasonable. So
okay, Kate, we can put that list together. The reps from 15 or 20 main organizations. And then David, if you could also prepare the survey too, so that we can simultaneously be blasting, the list with the survey.
Yeah.
Kate, is it appropriate for me to be including you in this?
Yeah, I can. We can work on that.
Okay. And so we'll need to do that soon, Kate, because this begins next week. Right?
Right.
Oh, I was going to say, just I've done a bunch of recruitments now, actually, which is it wasn't planned that way, but it's just turned out that way. What I've found in my experience with the stakeholder interviews and beginning parts is after maybe the first 5 or 6 or 7 stakeholder interviews, you start to see a recurring pattern of themes. And you
Mhm.
start to hear the same thing, and pretty soon you kind of have a diminishing rate of return of new information from the stakeholder interviews. And you really get a sense of, these are the top priorities this position should focus on, or the ideal qualities. And then it becomes more about having a trusting a process that the stakeholders can trust and buy in. And that's almost as important as the feedback they're giving. The fact that they were even asked for the feedback helps put transparency and trust into the process. And so offering the survey is a great way to make sure, like, hey, you know, oh, I didn't get a chance to do the interview, not a problem. Like, we still want your feedback, you know, shoot it to us in this little quick survey, and we'll make sure it gets included. And then again, building that trust with those very important stakeholders who are concerned about the whole selection process. But yeah, after a point, they do start to repeat some of the same things. I saw also in the chat the survey of the qualities used for the previous police chief process. I can share that. I worked on that as well, so I'll share it with this group. And then I have a confidentiality agreement that you can share with community members who, when it gets time for the interview process, and I can share it with the chair or whoever. And it'll just be a link, and then whoever is the designated signer on the city side, maybe it's Charmaine, she sends the link out and she signs it, and then the person signs it, and it's done, and everyone gets a PDF copy. So I can provide that as well.
So,
And just trying to add a little bit of clarification. So for the survey that we do, is the idea that we would have, you know, our top 10 criteria that we think this candidate needs to fill, and then maybe an other text field that people can just add additional things? Because I kind of think Liz is right. I think the majority of people are probably going to have, you know, of those top 10 qualities, you know, we say like pick the top 5. My guess is those top 5 are probably going to be common among most people that fill out the survey, is my guess.
Yeah, I mean, usually we ask either 3 to 5 is what we, sometimes it's 10 is a lot. So I think if you can get a few from each person, I think that would be solid.
And Charmaine has her hand up.
Go ahead. I was looking at my.
yeah, I have to unmute myself and let me lower my hand. I know a few months ago we talked about this position, and I'm trying to pull up the job description that was created by the transition committee. This has already been discussed and I guess decided on by the committee and pushed over to HR when we created the position. So I just want to make sure that we're not going backwards also, and then and doing all of this all over again, which would probably add more time. And I can pull it up. I can pull up the description that we created.
Yeah, I have it pulled up. I can share it too. But let me let David. I mean, I think what they're looking for is getting community input into that and other stakeholder input, kind of an elaboration or an expansion of the criteria that would be included in the job description. But I'll let David address that issue.
So what's your question?
Okay, because what I guess the question is that in our we already created a job description.
Right, you did, yeah.
Which lists some of the ideal qualities of a candidate and then the minimum qualifications. And the question is, how does that dovetail with the process of getting?
Oh, well, what we're asking in these stakeholder meetings is more like, you know, what are the types of, some of it is technical qualifications, some of it is personal qualification. Are you looking for, you know, somebody engaging, which I'm sure you are. Are you looking for somebody who's got outreach skills? It's more along lines of where their strengths are. Are you looking for somebody who's who's got skills in technology, those type of things. So it's, I hear, and I saw the job description, but this is kind of more, you know, what are we looking for in the specific candidate that we're doing the search for now? So some of it will certainly repeat what's in the job description. But I think it's, some of this you do as much to make sure the stakeholders feel like they're getting the input that you promised them. And I think that's part of the reason for doing this.
Yeah, and Charmaine, when we had this, we've done this in the past, we've had like a really formalized job description. And then after we mapped that up with the summary of all the stakeholder input, and it was almost spot on. In some cases, we tweaked the wording slightly to make sure that we were fitting what the stakeholders were asking. Maybe we added a bullet point here or there, but it didn't ultimately result in a significant change to the brochure text. It was pretty minor in many cases, but the value was huge because, like David is mentioning, just the fact that we asked for their input it lent credibility to the process, and that's almost as important as the feedback that they're providing. That you want them to feel like they have a skin in the game as part of this position, getting this position filled.
Yeah, and I agree with that 100%. Let me clarify. So we're going to get feedback through a survey that is going to go out to a broad list, and it's going to be a Survey Monkey or whatever. And David's going to work with Patrick on getting that sent out. And then we're going to identify some key community representatives for you to do a personal one-on-one interview with. Is that correct?
Correct.
And well, I'm comfortable with letting Patrick select those people. And we can suggest people to him if we want to. If you're comfortable selecting them.
Yeah, let's say Patrick and Kate.
Okay, so Patrick and Kate can select them. Is that okay with everybody? And so how many do you want, David? Do you saying?
You know, if you want to give me 20, the reality is you'll give me 20 and I'll probably talk to 15 of them because there's going to be conflict. So, yeah.
Okay.
I've already made a list of 10, so
Okay.
we're getting
Right.
started.
Okay, and so I think so Patrick, if you can work with David on getting, and who will send out the survey? Will that be you, David, or that you want us to send out the survey?
I can send to whoever, if it's Patrick, the survey that we typically use, and you may want to modify it. Again, the survey is really just going to be very similar to the guidelines we use when we do the verbal interviews.
Okay. And so
a very simple survey. So, but you may want to modify it. So I can get that out by Monday morning because it's a very, very easy survey.
okay. Well, and do you want Patrick to look over the surveys as well?
I should have somebody kind of be a point person to work with in that. And if
Okay, so Patrick, who's our community outreach person, is the best person to do that. And so for Patrick and if David, can you put your email in the chat?
Yes.
And maybe your phone number too, so that you and Patrick can connect. And then Patrick, if you can get him the list that you use for the notifying people, the community roundtables and so forth.
Please make sure that I am copied on the emails, please.
And then secondly, if the two of you can connect on the content of the survey. Somebody started to interrupt. Was that Liz or somebody else?
It was me. I was just gonna say, if you can flag for David, who are like the most critical, like for sure, like who are your most vocal supporters or opponents, and make sure that he knows like, oh, I need to for sure get in touch with so-and-so ahead of time, just so he knows like, and maybe they're not equal, maybe some are a little bit more sensitive, or we want to make sure they're involved. I mean, they're all important. I'm not saying they're not, but I think that would be key.
Okay. And And I'm not sure exactly what happened when I was kicked off, but did you get through the entire timeline? And is there anything else that you need specifically from us, David?
Well, so the question is, so this committee is part of the group that I'd like to talk to. And is that something you want to do now? Or is it something you would prefer to kind of do as individual meetings?
I think we can do it now. I think it's part of what we were planning on.
Yeah, okay. Well, then let me just get
The chair has to hop off, so he's not available.
Yeah, and so people that aren't available, I can certainly schedule separately.
Yeah, so if you could, Brandon, who's the chair of the commission, has to go to another meeting. So if you could maybe connect with him individually.
Okay. Gotcha. But let me just get.
And Charmaine, did you want to share the job description to show what we actually came up with before when we had this kind of similar discussion with this committee? If not, I can show it.
Yes, sure, that'd be great. Thank you.
Okay. Share screen.
David, if you can include me in all of the emails to our commissioners, that'd be great.
I will. Okay.
We have the okay, so what we came up with before was the ideal candidate would have three. Those are really more the technical things, but some of the qualifications we were looking at were ability to work in a cooperative, collaborative, and non-adversarial environment, 5 years of professional managerial legislative experience, especially since this person is going to be the number 2 in charge. Strong experience and background in actively seeking participation from a diverse range of community advocacy groups. Excellent problem-solving skills, interpersonal skills, preparing written reports. And we also indicated that a conversational fluency in Spanish would be a plus, but not necessarily a requirement. But I do think we need to have somebody who has the ability to connect and facilitate with community groups. So somebody who is a good active listener, who's in some respects, it may be good to have a local person who has an understanding of the San Diego community or the communities and so forth. And on the other hand, you could also have somebody new to San Diego who has the ability to quickly map out the communities and understand who the community leaders are and what the who the leadership in the who the official leaders are and who the unofficial leaders are in the community. So a person who has experience, grassroots experience. And so while managerial experience is important for the role of being number 2 in charge, I think what we're really looking for here is somebody who has been involved at the ground level, who isn't afraid to get their hands dirty, who's willing to go into a meeting where people are angry and agitated and listen and be able to respond to concerns. And so those are, I think that's really one key characteristic because police accountability is a hot button issue and people are sometimes passionate about it. And so people who are able to deal with that passion and in a productive way and can construct sometimes hostile feelings into a productive outcome is kind of the things we're looking for. But let me let others chime in.
Yeah, I'm sorry, this is Patrick. The qualification here that is the bachelor's degree in the social sciences. Sorry, can you scroll back to where that was?
Where was it?
It's right where you were, right there, the last bullet point. and a master's degree preferred in the social sciences. I'm a little nervous about the social sciences being listed here. And David, we don't know each other. My day job is I'm an academic. I'm a professor at UC San Diego. The problem with that kind of limitation is that the kind of training that it's asking for is often found in other kinds of degrees on different campuses, depending on how campuses are organized. And I don't want this to be a bar to anybody who actually has a lot of experience with community organizing and outreach. And so, you know, I know it does, David, I guess this is a message for you because I don't know if we can actually change this at this point, but that last phrase, related field, is the most important phrase in that sentence. This is not asking for advanced expertise in psychology or sociology or political science. It's looking for training in understanding what communities are, what cities are, how they operate, how they interface, and so on. And that kind of training can actually come from an English department on some campuses. It can come from an African American studies department, which may be in a school of the arts, you know. So I would prefer we actually change that phrase, but I don't want to reopen this can of worms to have to get this whole thing reapproved. So I would just urge the screeners to treat that final phrase, a related field, as the key phrase there. Don't treat this as a bar to participation. You know, treat it as an opportunity to ask someone about, well, what did your education teach you about this work? And then go with what they say.
No, I think that's great. And from a recruiter's point of view, the more you put very specific requirements on, the more you're limiting your field. So Pam Germany and I actually talked about this, and also the desire to get a master's degree at the pay level, and it's a bit of a concern. So I think if there's an understanding there's a lot of flexibility on the bachelor's degree, I think that will help with our recruitment.
I mean, I can imagine somebody who got a bachelor's degree in sculpture who went on to open a gallery in a city and then run an arts granting agency as a part of a city. And so that's great experience. You know, so just treat that, don't treat that as a bar, treat it as an opportunity to ask them about their education or something.
Good input.
And Liz, do we have the ability to tweak the job description at this point, or the qualifications?
Yeah, absolutely. It hasn't been posted yet on the website, and it yeah, absolutely. We can, when it gets ready, when everything gets finalized, or you know, it put into the brochure, what we'll do is, you know, this will be taken, put into the brochure, and then we can post it on the sandiego.gov website. And it'll be a really high-level description with a link to CPS-HR's website, which will host the brochure, and then people can read the details. But we have time to make changes.
I mean, I would prefer, if bachelor's degree is really a requirement, then I would prefer we just say a bachelor's degree. And I agree with David. I think anytime you include a master's and certainly a terminal degree, it just makes people feel like they're not going to be in the running, and you miss out on a lot of great people. But in terms of the bachelor degree part, I would recommend we just take off everything after the word degree. And if it's possible to remove masters, great.
What if, Patrick, what if it said something like a bachelor's degree in the social or graduate degree? Like that way it's more open, just bachelor's or graduate? Or is it, if it's not in, I guess it's not important to include if it's not a relevant selection criteria?
Yeah, well, if the person has a graduate degree, then by definition, they already have a bachelor's. So I would look in the world of academia, master's programs are coming under question more and more, and they are predatory. They tend to be loan generators. You know what I mean? Many universities are treating them as profit generators. And I don't want to create more demand for that kind of situation. And I say that as an academic, you know, who spent his life at a university. So, you know, I also think I've spent most of my life doing community work in one way or another. And the vast majority of people I've done that work with have not had a master's degree. And those are the people I want applying for this job. So, you know, I think when you get to the interview, you can start to ask questions that get to what you're looking for when you name these kinds of things. But to set that as a litmus test for someone being able to even get to the interview, to me is a bad idea.
Yeah, you can certainly say that candidates that have a specific degree will be more favorably considered. I mean, that's an option to make it a requirement. So.
I have a comment. I actually agree with Patrick. I think it's fairly elitist to say that a master's degree is preferred, and people who are community organizers and involved in the kind of work that we're looking for somebody tend not to be people who go on for master's degrees, because from someone who has both a master's degree and a law degree, but they're tend to be people who go on to master's degrees tend to be looking to be academics or other kinds of things, and tend not to be, at least the people that I know in San Diego outside of the law biz. So I agree that it should just be master's degree, a bachelor's degree, period. or even preferred, and take out all the rest of that stuff, and then have the Spanish and whatever.
Yeah, well, I would say I would keep it at this level of a bachelor's degree required, but I'm okay with simply saying a bachelor's degree semicolon, and then take out everything until we get to conversational fluency and Spanish preferred, and 5 years of progressively responsible experience in a community engagement setting preferred, and probably that the last one is probably most important, although 5 years may be negotiable, but experience in community engagement setting is really what this position is all about. So
yeah, and again, I strongly agree with that. And again, when you get to the short list or to the finalists, you can then begin to tease out the kind of experience that you're looking for when you include language like this. So if you imagine, I'm not sure what it is that people are imagining when they think that a master's degree qualifies someone for this kind of work. I don't know what kind of master's degree they're imagining. And I say that as someone who has a master's and a doctorate and have administered a lot of master's degrees. And I'm not sure what people are imagining when they say you have to have a master's. But whatever it is, it's the kind of thing you can tease out. Yeah, but Charmaine, a master's degree doesn't necessarily prepare you for an administrative position. A master's degree might prepare you to read a bunch of academic books and write a thesis about it. I don't know what.
Let me just clarify. I wasn't referring to the master's degree. I'm referring to the position as a whole. This position is going to be crucially important as far as community engagement and also administrative, the functions within the city. So that's what I wanted to say. Master's degree, yes, while master's degree can be preferred, it doesn't always have to be required. And maybe that language should be put in there somewhere. Well, you know,
Well, I think we should take it out. I think masters shouldn't even be mentioned, because when people see an ad like this and they see that anyone with a master's is going to be preferred over them, then they're likely to say, well, why would I apply then? And I don't think we should set that bar for this position.
Okay.
But I
Can we
do
go ahead and-
take your point.
Yeah, can we go ahead just to move on? Is there any opposition to doing what I suggested? So putting a semicolon after bachelor's degree and then taking out everything until you come to additionally. So you're taking out in social sciences, including psychology, et cetera, and a master's degree or terminal degree, taking that out as well. And I think it might be helpful to, and I'm not sure we would put it as a preferred, but if maybe if there's another term between required and preferred, somebody who has experience in law enforcement oversight would be a plus. But I don't know what terminology you would use and whether you would, and maybe that wouldn't go into the job description. Maybe that would go into the list of qualities that would be helpful. So any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I thought, Doug, your feedback is out of control. You need to start using your headphones again. It's like this weird futurist cave echo anytime anybody but you starts talking. It's like, yeah, it's like Star Wars, the Doug generation. Sorry, it's been a long week. My suggestion is that we don't list anything else as a preferred qualification, but that on the application itself, we include a question like, have you had any experience with NACOL and or law enforcement oversight? And I would expand that to include a more general question about oversight of any kind. So have you been involved in any kind of oversight of a public, of any kind of public agency? Because there might be people who have supervised a teaching credential or something, or have done programmatic reviews of the efficiency of city offices. Well, that would be really interesting experience to hear about. So if we include that as an interview question or as an application question, that would be, I think that would get us the information that we want from it, if that makes sense.
Okay, and I didn't hear all that as I was changing to my headset, but you're suggesting that we keep the language as I suggested and not include the police oversight as a part of the job description, but something we would look at in ideal candidates and in questions. Is that correct?
No, I don't think that's, so I agree that we should say a bachelor's degree, semicolon, and cut out everything up to additionally.
Right.
In terms of including oversight question, I wouldn't include it anywhere on this.
Well, that's what I was saying.
Yeah, okay, then yes, you heard me correctly.
Okay, but it could be something we would bring up in interviews, et cetera. Okay.
Makes sense.
Okay, so I think we can stop sharing this now. And right at 11:30, is there anything else that you need from us today, David, in order to get started?
No, I don't think so. You know, the other question I'm going to be asking all the stakeholders is what are the key priorities? But I think a lot of that is in the information you sent me. But certainly if there's things that are not, you have a very good work plan out there that are not in there that you'd like to have me include, just let me know, and obviously I'll add that. But I think the last discussion, I think gave me a good idea, I think, on how to proceed. So.
Okay, so any other thoughts on qualities?
Kate, would you like to give me a call about 5 minutes after the meeting ends and we can,
Actually, I have appointments starting at 11:30. I've got
Okay.
people coming in, so I'll get back to you after all that.
So. Okay, anything else we need to accomplish with this part of our agenda? Okay, then we can move on, and David and Liz, you're free to excuse yourself, or if you want to stay on, you can. And it's like Patrick has to leave too. Oh no, Patrick just waving him goodbye.
I also have to leave
Right.
at 11:30.
Yeah,
And I do too.
okay, well, I think we can complete the rest of it in a minute. So if you could put the agenda back up. We wanted to discuss next week the issue that Kate asked to be put on the agenda regarding the eligibility of a person convicted of a violent crime against the government employee or official to serve on the commission. And so we'll do that. And then the following week, we'll meet with Dwayne to talk about our standard operating procedures for investigations. Is there anything else that people would like to have on the agenda for next week? Okay, so I'll put that on the agenda. If anything else comes up, I'll add that to the agenda as well. And people need to leave. And so if there's no other business, we can go ahead and adjourn. So thank you, everybody. Bye. Have a good weekend.